Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here with us. This is the City of Aspen City Council work session for June 17th, 2024. On our agenda this evening, we have Theater Aspen Rio Grande Park request. This is a joint meeting with the Open Space and Trails Board. And then we have a Marolt Open Space proposed bike skills trail site visit. And just so everybody knows, these are not scheduled for public hearing this evening. So comments and public input will be limited to those that are maybe selected by, if they've got some sort of expertise or relevant information, that's great. Part of the reason for this is we are going on a site visit. We're not set up to capture public input out at the site appropriately for consistent input. So therefore, we'll hold that until there's public hearings on these items. But we'll start off with Theater Aspen here in the room.
Thank you, Mayor Tory and members of City Council and members of the Open Space and Trails Board. Thank you for carving out time to talk about the Theater Aspen project with us this evening. And with that, I'd like to introduce the Parks and Open Space team. On my right here, I've got Matt Kuhn, our Parks and Open Space Director, and Michael Tunte, our Landscape Architect. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Great, thank you. I'll keep my comments very brief here at the start and offer as much time as I can to our tenants and partners, Theater Aspen, to go through their presentation. As we stated in the memo, the goal for tonight is to provide you all with some updates on work that has transpired over the last 2 years, almost 2 years, since we had a sketch plan review with City Council. Since that time, Mike, Austin, and myself have engaged on several interactions and design charrettes with Charles Cuniff and Jed Bernstein and their teams about potential revisions to the sketch plan design that you saw or that some of you saw in 2022. As a result of that, we have a new revised design. Our Open Space and Trails Board has seen it on one occasion. And the goals for tonight are to really look at that design and determine if there is general consensus on the direction that the design is going. But the bigger question that we're looking to answer is this permanent theater building's proposal an appropriate use for Rio Grande Park? We're hoping that following their presentation, discussion can occur and help advise staff as to answering those two questions. Our goal tonight is to wrap up around 5 p.m. and we'll have some vans here to move on to the second part of the evening. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Jed and Charles.
Thank you.
Councilors, while they are getting set up to just procedurally, no decision making, again, as was mentioned tonight, is our direction is being requested by staff. I do anticipate after Open Space and Trails has an opportunity to meet regarding the proposal that I will seek negotiation direction from you in an executive session here this summer. So just some clarity for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. We have, I think, Tori, you mentioned the last time we were here that this is such an interesting, wonderful project, and if we could snap our fingers and it was just there, it would be a lot easier to decide upon. I don't know that we can snap our fingers, but I'll say that if it was a wonderful project before, it's a better project now, and that's as a result of the consultation we've had with our partners in parks and open space and rethinking some of the key parts of this design. So we're looking forward to sharing those with you. Pardon me, if we go to the next slide. So we're going to just remind everybody, and for Bill and Sam, who weren't here the last time, a little bit about the background of this project, talk to you about what's happened since we last met. Charles will take you through the design changes and as it stands now. We'll talk a little bit about the program approach and our anticipated approach to community input, and then take questions. We hope to plow through this in about 20 minutes or so and leave lots of time for questions and comments. Next slide, please. So we believe a new facility will give us the ability to First of all, serve audiences year-round, to expand our educational offerings for locals and theater students nationwide, and I say that because of the families and kids who come from around the country during both key seasons of the year. It'll allow us to upgrade our stage technology to meet audience needs and meet industry standards, and it will provide two performance or meeting spaces that are right-sized for other community groups and functions. As I'm sure you all know, many of the other choices are really too large for some of the smaller community groups, and a facility of the size we're proposing will in fact service them much better. Next slide, please. Since we last met with you all, we've had multiple meetings with Parks and Open Space staff, as Matt and Austin referred to. Charette meetings with Parks Open Space and Charles and his team to my left. We undertook some geotechnical studies, a couple of meetings with the Parks and Open Space Board, developing the revised design with the principal aim of consolidating the footprint and also reimagining the roof concept, which is something we had gotten a lot of questions about. And then there have been meetings between our attorney and Jim and Alan, our land use consultant. And Charles will now take you through the pretty pictures. Then I'll come back.
Hi. Sorry, I've been on planes all day. Just left Boston at 6 this morning and got in here just a few minutes ago. The latest design started, if you go to the next slide, just to refresh you all, Theater Aspen site was once a train depot. Rio Grande Railroad was here back in the mining days, and that's why it's called Rio Grande Park. The first real use of that space that wasn't rail-related or mining-related was as a snow dump for the city. Then shortly after that, when the snow dump was wanting to be cleaned up, it became an art park. A bunch of us volunteers in town helped make an art park out of that site. And then it was decided then to try to do theater in the park. And there's an image here of the original theater tent was a circus tent, just reused. The tent or the facility went through several iterations of more and more advanced tents. The latest build project down there was to actually do a seasonal lobby, which was the lobby that you see down there now, and the pad for the tent, so the tent could come up seasonally. The concern was what neighbors would say about that, seeing the tent. It's turned out that the tent's is staying up, and we haven't heard complaints from people like Oklahoma Flats and other locations. So hopefully it's been well received. Then the art park was there from I think the late 80s, and then the John Denver Sanctuary was positioned there. Jeff Woods and Annie Denver located the John Denver Sanctuary here because they wanted it near the art park and the theater. So that's an important consideration that the theater ended up here, and then the John Denver Sanctuary came here because the theater was here. Images, what you see is what you see today from across the pond. The next image is what was proposed back a ways in 2004. Yeah, no, this is a long time ago.
Oh, sorry.
And then we've taken that. Parks decided or gave us feedback that they were concerned about how much coverage this would take. It would extend the footprint of the disturbance of the park area to a pretty large degree. And they also felt that it would be difficult and expensive to maintain the landscaping on a large mound of earth, and it might not look very normal, very natural. So the decision was and the suggestion was to expose the building more, so you'd see a portion of the building. It would be de minimis compared to what's underground, but still the theater would be mostly underground with some presence on the grade level, so the arrival sequence would be the same. And the only area that would really be taller would be the fly area that covers the fly. We have to have the backdrops and staging occur in the building for it to work as a legitimate theater. The next slide, I think, shows the existing site on the left, it's on everybody's left, is the existing disturbance and footprint of the building and the outlying support areas of the building, the trailers and the actors' quarters and restrooms and all of that. The previously proposed plan is in the middle, and you can see the extent, the light blue or light greenish blue was the extent of the disturbance when we wanted a mound over the whole building. On the right is a reduced version of that where we are bringing some of the building up through the grade, and still a lot of the building is covered in landscape. So it's a nice combination of landscape covered building and exposed elements of the building, which we feel would be attractive as a destination in the park. The next slide is basically showing a more detailed landscape plan, showing the green roof over the building. You can see the Rio Grande restrooms down on the lower left, and the upper middle is the part of the building that would protrude up through the landscape. That would encompass the fly and all the high volume area that the theater needs to function. We have the roof of the lobby section and the arrival part of the building is a green roof, and that would be activated. You'd be able to use the public would be welcome there anytime. There's stairs that go up there, and there's also elevator and handicap access. So it's accessible to everybody, and everybody's welcome to continue to use it as a park. It actually may be more usable this way than it is currently, because currently there's really no place, unless you're in the building, to participate with the landscape. We believe this will allow the landscape to be a centerpiece. And you can see the gridded area is a sort of a trellis over an outside space that could be picnics, could be performances, could be public events, presentation, anything that people want to use it for. Then just a few images that kind of show the before and after. On the left is the existing approach. You can see the white tent in the background. And on the right is the proposed view where you'd see, and the landscape hasn't changed. This is the same landscape in front of each image. The landscape on the building on the right is the building, but its coloration and its landscape roof make it a little bit more blended with the landscape. Next. Again, this is on the left is the proposed existing entrance, and on the right is the proposed entrance with the curvilinear front, the grass roof, and a little bit of the trellis you can see on top. Next. Then on the left is existing, on the right is proposed. And next. From the John Denver Sanctuary, the building should basically blend in the same as it does now, if you could say it blends in now. You have the white tent and the lobby. On the right side, the proposal would be about the same scale, but it would be more earth-colored materials, Corten, and landscape materials. So a lot of landscaping would occur that doesn't occur there now. And like anything else we will do with this project is to work closely with Parks and Open Space about how all the details of the landscape are handled. Next. And then the Mill Street arrival portion, this is where currently we service the theater. On the left is the current approach to where the parking lot is, and you can see the tent behind it in the white. And then on the right would be, we would have a Corten gate that would hide all of the loading dock and the service entrance to the theater. So the passersby on the Rio Grande Trail won't be distracted by seeing the activity beyond, or, you know, if there's a trash dumpster or a service truck or delivery truck or things, sets being delivered and packaged, you won't see that. And then next. And then just an aerial to encompass the whole thing. This is from the above. If you were in a drone above the John Denver Sanctuary, this is what you would see. So the theater is mostly underground, with the predominant part that you see is the fly area over the stage. The concept is to step it as much as possible, so it's not one mass. It's It's stepped, it's interesting, it's sort of like a sculpture. And then next is another view, similarly a little closer in. And I believe that might be the last image.
You have interiors.
Oh, the interior, sorry, we go to the floor plans. This is the park level. The bridge you walk across to go to the entry is on the right, lower right corner. And the yellow is the lobby area, similar in size to the lobby now, it's just it's curvilinear in shape. Purple is functions like the booth for tickets, the concessions, and then you have pink is the restrooms, red is the theater itself. You come in and go down. Right now you go in, you go up in order to go down, because in order to have a stage with the audience rising up from the stage, right now, because we're at grade, we have to go up to go down. Here, you come in and go down into the theater, much like you do a number of theaters. Then the next one is the lower level. The lower level is the remaining lower section of the seating and the stage itself. The green rooms off to the left for the actors to meet requirements for the Actors Guild. And then the blue on the right is a rehearsal room. That's something that really is needed in conjunction with the theater. It's completely below grade and completely below the lobby, so there's no visual impact from that. Back to, this is what you see when you approach. And is that the last slide
Yep,
for me?
I think so. All right, let's talk for a couple of minutes about the program approach. Our three-show summer season and September Solo Flights Festival would continue to be the cornerstone of our programming. But a new facility would allow us to partially or completely consolidate some of our current activities that are spread over multiple locations. So the cabarets that we have, the education classes, education productions could all be centered here. New initiatives that we might consider would include winter or spring concerts in the shoulder seasons or productions, perhaps additional holiday programming. And we sketched on the next slide, just so you could see it graphically, and this is, I should have put the word potential in capital letters because, who knows, but it's a realistic approach to what we might think. So the bars that are in red are the current usage, and those pretty much fill up those 5 months. And then you see in blue a projection of how often it might be used in the other months of the year. And that's 207 days, which leaves roughly 155 days or so that it could be used by other groups or for other purposes. In that regard, we have had probably the most extensive conversations with Dance Aspen about partnering with us. I don't know whether that would be as an equity partner or simply as I'm going to use the word tenant, not in a legal sense, but as a co-occupier with us. I don't know if that'll come to fruition, but we certainly are interested in that. We've had talks with the high school. As I think most of you know, we do a lot of the teaching and programming for the high school in the performing arts, and it would be a natural extension of our current activities to get the kids involved with professional productions year-round. And we really are looking to direction from you all. If you said the objective is to have the lights on 365 days a year, we certainly would work to achieve that. If you said, 200 days is just fine, our financial plan does not depend on filling up all the other days. I'm not going to say we wouldn't be happy to do that, but if you said, 200 and some days is enough, we could certainly live with that. Our friends at Parks suggested that we talk a little bit about our approach to community input, and I think as a basic principle, we believe that the more people are exposed to this idea and learn about the project, the more engaged and excited they'll become. And it has often been said of me that I would be happy to perform at the opening of a refrigerator, and it would certainly be, this would be no exception. We are anxious to share this idea, share this vision with anybody and everybody that you suggest and that we can find. To be more specific on the next slide, these are just some thoughts we've had already, which is to have a lobby display during the summer, which has visuals and a description, a QR code so people could give us comments and feedback, community open houses, as our friends over at the Institute and the Music Festival are doing as we speak, meetings with the Oklahoma Flats homeowners who would be probably most exposed to what we're doing during constructions, whatever public interest groups you suggest or areas that you suggest, we are anxious to share these ideas with. So in conclusion, we think this project, as Charles pointed out in his little history slides, is consistent with a long-standing vision and goals of the park and of the sanctuary. We think the project has many public benefits, not just for Theater Aspen's audiences and actors and artists. We think our proposed uses are completely consistent with how the space has been used for nearly 2 decades. We're not suggesting putting a swimming pool on top or building condos or doing anything like that. We're going to produce just as we've always produced and hopefully even higher quality. And I think the most important thing to say, and we said it last time, and we've tried to live by that these past 20 months, is that we're anxious to continue to work collaboratively and sensitively with all of you and your colleagues to make this a reality. We are not naive, even though it seems like a slam dunk to us, you know, a privately funded new theater and the city gets to have that. What's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal because it's a precious park and it's a precious city asset, and it means we have to be sensitive in how we approach this. And we get that, and we are committed to working through what other obstacles those become. Questions, comments?
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll start with council members if they've got any questions, mostly for clarification or requests for information to come back or anything like that. Bill, I'll start with you.
Thanks. Thanks, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Thanks, Bill.
Could you talk a little bit or provide more information later, either one is fine with me, on the current lease structure, sort of how the current lease works and what it entails?
I'm going to jump into that. We will provide that to you.
Great.
Staff can provide that. It's, in summary, 10 years. I'm looking at Matt. Matt, why don't you step up and answer it just real quick? 10 years. We've done one extension, is my recollection at this point.
That's correct. That's correct. We had initial 10 years. We just renewed that last year or 2 years
I
ago.
think 2 years ago. I think we're 2 into we have got 8 more left in this tranche.
So there was an initial 10-year lease, there's been one 10-year renewal, which we've just started,
Correct.
and monthly rent?
De minimis, I think it's $10 a year, or
Got it. Thanks.
we will not pay more than 9, no matter what happens going forward. I just want to be clear.
Understood. I saw in Charles's presentation the restrooms inside the building. That was initially a question, but now it's more of a statement. I think it's essential that that stays and that we don't rely on the Rio Grande Park restrooms. Constructability. The thing that comes to mind for me is dewatering of this site. Any exploration of that yet? Any
Yeah,
contemplation of that?
Thanks. I should have brought that up earlier. We did do a geotechnical test down there and looked at watering. And dewatering was not considered an issue. The water table is down about 18 feet, and we're going down roughly that depth. However, we would anticipate that we would plan for it to be completely underwater if necessary. So it would be designed to withstand a mild flood event, or if the water table changes over time, it would be designed as if it's going to live in water. And there's many ways to do that are successful, and I've been involved with a few buildings in Florida that are 12 feet below sea level. So it's a technique, but it's definitely constructible.
Okay, great. I guess I think about it as just a little bit longer of a construction duration and more expensive, more complex construction, but necessary in that location. My only concern is that beautiful deck on the green roof looks like a great place for private events. and I think others will think that over time, and I'm not supportive of that use there at all. So supportive of everything else here. Want to make sure that there's clear restrictions in the lease for Theater Aspen renting that out for private events.
We have those now on the plaza sort of area. This, I agree with you, it'll be even more appealing. I don't think we'd, be happy with zero, but we certainly get the idea that it's not a, free-for-all up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think theater-related stuff I'd be
Yes.
fine with.
Yeah.
Weddings, you renting it out for weddings, I'm not fine with.
All right, I understand.
Otherwise, I'm very supportive of this. I'd be supportive of exploring some use of the city's arts and culture funds that we have for this project. But thanks for the nice presentation, very informative.
Thank you, Bill.
John?
Just a couple quick questions. I'm sorry, how deep did you say the excavation is going to go?
The geotechnical report goes down, it didn't hit water until 18 feet down, but we would plan for water in any case, whether it's 5 feet down or 10 feet down or 16. It would be designed to be able to live in a wet location.
Okay, I understand that, but how deep below grade is going to be excavated below the water table?
We were going down about 16 feet.
16.
In depth. That was, again, this is conceptual. I mean, it'll be designed to be appropriate and appropriately built for that location. But yes, it is a potentially wet location.
And do you have a potential timeline of how long it would take construction start to finish?
The last time we explored this, and that's 2.5 years ago, so I think obviously a next step is to do that again. The estimate was 18 to 22 months. Our dream would be to start it at the end of a season in August or September, so we'd only be out of there for one summer, and we would perhaps relocate to the district or somewhere else in that absent summer, and then reopen triumphantly in the second summer. But, I wouldn't bet my house on it yet, until we know more, but that's the general plan.
And last question, all access to this potential construction site would be off of Mill Street, right?
That's the plan, yes.
Okay.
All kind of heavy vehicular access would likely be off of Mill Street, but there would be light vehicle access via Rio Grande Place. So with the parking garage here, as they are currently within their lease, in the evenings they operate a small golf cart to transport for accessibility from the intersection of Rio Grande Place down the Rio Grande Trail to the tent. We anticipate that would likely continue, but we'd aim that with this change, the access comes off of Mill.
John, did you mean ongoing or during the construction?
During construction was my primary concern.
Well, that I think.
That's Mill Street.
Yeah, that's Mill Street.
Thanks.
Sam?
Yeah, thank you. It does look like a beautiful project, and I think you did bring in the constraints nicely. I just wanted to add, before I did questions, of bringing in Rio Grande Park users' input. I walk my dog in there, everyone uses it, the rugby team and all those different things, so just there's a lot of different usages down there, trying to reach those people as best you can, whether you leave like a QR code or something down there would be nice. One big concern of mine, if Theater Aspen were to go defunct after this project was done, yeah, what would the maintenance and upkeep, or what would it be like for the city to have to take over the theater if you were no longer using it?
Jim, do you want us to speculate what we might agree on, or do you want to talk?
It is something that is important for everybody to consider. I think at this point, we probably are speculating on how that will play out in the negotiations that will occur to allow the longer term that they're proposing. Right now, the lease would go through October 1st, 2031, but for a longer period of time, we would, in that negotiation process, we'd have to work on how that would be taken over, how that would be handled, what it would look like. But right now, I do think we'd be speculating significantly to address it here.
Yeah,
However, we would have a legal document that does spell that out as part of your lesser role with the leasing for the tenant improvements that they're proposing. So I would clarify, there will be something established.
Absolutely. I'm not trying to say that it wouldn't
Yeah.
be. It's just right now what those terms would be very, very speculative.
beyond construction and the disturbance in the meantime, are you aware of any other opposition that you face for uses in this park? Are there any other competing interests that you know about? Are there any other people that are upset for other reasons than the fact that the park would be disturbed for 18 to 22 months?
Just because you're not paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, but
Yeah.
there is no major opposition that I know of, but we've purposely not really gone very, very public on this because we wanted to, make sure we were in concert here. The best argument for this, I think, is that we're taking up a comparable amount of space for a very comparable use. So those are two big controversy points that are not going to be at issue. And I would hope that, people would appreciate that and then appreciate the additional quality to the community when the thing is done. But, so there is no major problem that I know of right now, but we're ready to talk to everybody and anybody.
That's a good answer. And then lastly, there's a lot of projects going on in Aspen, or a lot of potential projects. It seems like you've had flexibility, but do you have flexibility in when to do this, as far as if like a Lift 1A or an entrance to Aspen or some other major project is going on concurrently, so that's not disturbances everywhere?
Well, we certainly have some flexibility. It's hard to keep the coalition together, funding-wise and everything else. And we've been at this for a while. And I think that one of the real positives about working with Matt and Mike and everybody in Parks is that we're trying to be sensitive to that altogether, because it's going to be a drain on their time, even if it's just to make sure we don't leave a giant hole in the ground. Obviously, it's going to be a tax on their resources. So I think, honestly, if you said, well, come back in 10 years, I don't think that would be my best Monday, but.
No.
But.
And that's not what I'm saying. I guess the last one I have for you is just, in the perfect world, when would you start this project? Would it be next summer, or would it be the summer after? Or what do you
Well,
have
I think,
timeline-wise?
I think if we could get to the formal beginning of the land use review at the end of this summer, and I've been given different estimates about how long that might take, I guess somewhere between 12 and 24 months. Does that sound right, Sarah? Ish? 24 months?
Yeah, it'll depend on the completeness of the application and the technical review required, particularly for the geotechnical.
Right. So anyway, if you put that in a timeline, Sam, so you're thinking shovel and ground in fall of '26, optimistically, and then beautiful new theater opens in 2028, as a for instance.
Okay. No, thank you. Those are very good clarifying answers, and it does look like a beautiful project, so.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Ward?
Yeah, several questions. Thank you for bringing this forward, and I'm happy to see that it's proceeding, that it hasn't gone into permanent hibernation for the last couple of years. Some of my concerns are the visual effect of the fly area. I understand the importance of it, and I'm curious the height of the fly versus the height of the existing tent.
The existing tent, if I remember, is around 17 feet, and the new entrance would be a little bit lower than that, and the landscape top would be a little bit lower than that. The fly would be up to about 26, 27 feet. I think the height limit's 28, but we'll endeavor to stay below that. It's also not just across, it's stepped so that we can accommodate the absolute minimum height we need, and then have it work its way down, so it's more of a sculptural landscape effect than a building effect.
Yeah, I understand, I appreciate it, but coming from the Rio Grande Trail, no matter what direction you're going, from the visual effect that these show, it's still a pretty substantial piece of building that's, you can shield it, and it is shielded right now by a lot of trees. Which leads me to another question, is that behind the theater now, if you're coming from the powerhouse, that there are a number of trees there. Are those going to be disrupted will they be taken down for construction?
A number of them are near where the pump house is, and the pump house would still remain where it is, and the trees around it would remain. And even if we disturb some for the grading and just to the extent that you have to excavate, we would work with Parks to plant back as densely as they desire. You know, it's going to be give and take. It's going to be however we want it, how much we want to do to shield the building versus how much they want to do and see the building. I mean, it's kind of a trade-off.
Yeah, coming up from the old powerhouse now, you almost have to know that there's a building there to look to your left and see it.
Yeah.
It kind of disappears, but if you look at it, it's the back of house entrance, so it's, if it could.
The grade does slope up, and it will continue to slope up further than it does now, which will help us screen the actual building. So it'll feel a lot more like a landscape than building.
And Ward, when you come off the bridge from the powerhouse, which is our sort of back entrance now, that will be all cleaned up, because now it just looks like a strange parking lot back there. And with this, gate and the way Charles has drawn it, it won't look like a tree, but it'll look like it will blend in more with the aesthetic of the park.
And for comparison, how many seats does the current theater have?
Current theater has 199. The drawing Charles showed you was at 291. I would say that's on the high side, and we might very well come in slightly lower than that, but there's no interest in going bigger than that.
And the district theater seat count there?
Roughly 550 or 6, I believe.
And the Wheeler?
Also around 500, yeah. The Wheeler has, of course, 2 levels, has a balcony, very tightly sloped orchestra section, and then a balcony over that.
And there's been discussion for years about redoing the district theater. How would your cooperation with the school district, with the Aspen Santa Fe, with Dance Aspen, how would, I know it's pure speculation, but if this were to go in as presented to us this evening, what kind of effect would that have on the need for the district theater?
Well, I don't know that I have enough insight into the sort of specific mechanical upgrades of the district theater that the school is looking to make just in the machinery. But I think we've always said that the district theater is primarily for the use of the students, and a professional theater doesn't belong there because it's going to take time away from the students. So I think this is complementary. I think giving kids the opportunity to work in a professional setting is valuable, but so is the opportunity to work on their own projects. We've started a wonderful program with them where we bring in Broadway designers every fall in each of the disciplines that do 2 to 3 week rotation teaching things, which in turn then helps the kids get trained so that when they do their big spring musical, they're doing the tech for that. So those kind of programs will only be, I think, enhanced by having this facility. And yeah, I mean, I don't see that theater withering away because of this. But it is too big for most organizations. It's to be too big for us. If that were our main home, it would be too big on a regular basis.
So concerns about construction, the environmental impact of the construction, the control of construction debris. As we all know, that river going through there is part of our stormwater treatment mitigation. So I'm really concerned about trying to keep the nature of that water pristine and how construction would protect that.
Do you have?
Well, I mean, technically, it would be a high priority, and there would be construction fencing, debris control. It would be monitored as well. I think we could even monitor the water quality on an ongoing basis to make sure that there's nothing getting into the water. It's whatever means that you guys would like to see, or whatever level you'd like to see it maintained, we'd be willing to do.
This is to address, well, the Rio Grande Park would be available for use the whole time of construction.
Yeah.
And to address John's question about, there's no road that goes into there now, but with heavy construction, would it be coming through?
The
How
road,
would it come in? It comes right?
yeah, the road from Mill Street is rated for a fire truck, so it will handle the trucks that would need to come in to do this.
And that's before the river or after the river as you're going north?
When you're going down Mill Street, it's right where that bus, because of like a bus stop there, pull out, it's right near there. It goes around the back of the northwest corner of Rio Grande Park and across the bridge, and the bridge is rated for a fire truck as well.
And that's the access that's being used now for all of the theater operations?
Yes.
And just for clarity, I think I've always felt that that area between here and the residential areas on the other side of the river as a kind of a transition from the hustle bustle of downtown and the residential nature past the river. I think we're all familiar with the objections from McLean Flats when the old powerhouse was projected to be a multiple use, so that's a concern for me. But also a concern, there's been talk at this table recently about activating the powerhouse for some public use, and I know that I have concerns with that, as I expressed concerns previously about the private use of the theater balcony or the theater in that whole area that I think the lease allows for. You're using that for fundraising and for weddings and other uses as well. So I'd like that to be out on the table at the beginning, is that the current lease does allow that.
It does. It's restricted, I think, to 6 uses a year.
6 or 8.
I can't remember which, of non-related theater uses, yes. In terms of neighborhood impact, this is, I think, a better deal for folks who live near there, because the sunken nature of the theater and the permanent enclosure is actually going to muffle sound and all sorts of noise for people in the lobby, et cetera. So I think that's, and we don't really get complaints now, but to the extent we do, it will be better.
And the open parking lot that's there now has a source of disturbance for neighbors too, when vehicles or people are in there, and that'll all be enclosed.
Yeah, and I don't know what the use of the Rio Grande parking garage is in the summertime when the high use is. You're increasing the seating by about 100. I don't know. I'm curious if there's going to be enough capacity in that garage for parking for patrons of the arts to use the shuttle that you have now for those that don't want to walk that couple of blocks to the theater.
One of the things we're going to do this summer anyway is a census study on how did you get here. We don't believe a majority of our audience does drive because we're positioned so centrally in town. But as somebody who does use that garage at night, I can tell you that after 6 o'clock there is capacity. So it's great.
That was my seat of the pants answer as well, but that's not always as educated as I wish it were. I think when this came in front of us a couple of years ago that there were concerns from Open Space and Trails about the maintenance of that, the green roof. And I'm curious how in your dealings with Theater Aspen and how you've resolved that and where you are on that now, and the continuing maintenance of that if it goes to Theater Aspen or the Parks Department.
In brief, I think the original concept that was presented was really about building the park over the structure and boundaries, limits of disturbance, If there was a issue with the membrane sealing the roof, who would take care of it? How would the landscaping be affected? Were all real big concerns for us. In this instance, as that 3-staged graphic showed, I think it's actually going to be a little easier for us to define the lease area with this structure, the way it is proposed. While we have not gotten into full terms of the lease, I would anticipate that it's very likely that Theater Aspen is responsible for those areas that are within their leased area and responsible for the maintenance of those, even if they do include landscaping.
I have to comment that the quality of productions that go on at at the theater are phenomenal. Getting into it and out of it are somewhat of a challenge, and it seems like the quality of the venue doesn't meet the quality of the productions. Let me make sure I get all my questions answered here. Yeah, I think that answers everything that I had jotted down here. Make sure that you get a good conversation going with Oklahoma Flats. Thank you. I'm excited about this. If this can happen, I think that the programs you put on up at the high school, I know this year to get tickets, you had to go through the Theater Aspen site, so the collaboration between the school and the Theater Aspen, commendable in the space that would be available. It's exciting to me, and if Dance Aspen could use it for rehearsals, all of those seem to be pluses for me.
Thank you, Ward.
Thanks, Ward. I'm going to just put out a couple of questions that I have. I also want to see if any board members have any outstanding questions. And then do we have still a presentation from you or not tonight?
Not tonight.
Okay, thanks. So my first question is, can you just tell me again, there's 2 theaters in this, one above, one below?
One's a rehearsal room only.
Well, to be precise, there are there are 2 spaces underground. Both are underground. They're adjacent. And the second smaller space is primarily a rehearsal space, although it could be configured, because it'll have flex chairs, seating. It could be configured for meetings, our solo flights type production, small things.
And the other is the theater
Main
itself?
theater chamber.
Of 296.
291.
291. Okay. I had questions. Some of them have been answered. The height difference between current existing and proposed is about 10 feet. I still have questions around a lease agreement and usage agreement, how that would be impacted by year-round versus summer season. I have some questions around the operations of this going forward. Some council members were even wondering if there's an inability by Theater Aspen to make use of this facility going forward, what happens? Mine may not be as far down the road as dark road as that is, but just even that utilizing something like this to capacity in your business plan or forecasting about what you're going to be and who you're going to be. I think where that kind of becomes important for me is that I think you demonstrated it's about 60-something additional days perhaps of production use, but is that not including rehearsal time and the rest? So are we truly looking at something that is busy to a certain degree? And how many more patrons is that? How many more, what is the intensity difference between today versus a new iteration? And is that appropriate? Is that appropriate for your organization or that location? I will say I am a fan and supporter of Theater Aspen. I think that all of us recognize what it brings to this community for the theater arts as well as for our children's experience in the theater, and that doesn't just mean acting and singing and dancing, but that has a lot more ramifications that I think a lot of us really appreciate. Second thing I'll say is I would love an upgrade down there. There are some great performances, and then the wind starts blowing.
Or the
You know,
rain
so,
starts.
I mean, so can we or should we do better than perhaps what we have currently? Yes, I would be for that. Is what you're proposing the appropriate scale and intensity for that location? I have questions about. And I have those questions not for me, but on behalf of my community. I've for a long time said that I consider this to be public park space. And even though a vote is not required for this agreement perhaps going forward, I would be interested in an advisory vote and see what people feel. See if there is the overwhelming support that we would hope is out there for a theater upgrade there, or is there more concern around other community values? So I know you don't want to hear about going to a vote in this community perhaps, but you know, for me, this is kind of a park space, and that is a consideration that I have. So those are a few of my questions around this. I ask those not just for my personal knowledge, but I think if this is to move forward, that these are the things that are going to have to be part of presentation. The presentation that we saw tonight, I think, was still pretty light touch, pretty surface in a lot of areas, and I think a lot more detail would need to be presented. I do probably most directly have concerns about the river location and its impacts during construction and ongoing. That's probably my most important concern to me. But like a lot of my colleagues up here, there's tremendous support for your organization and what you do for the community. So if we can find a way that we make this something that is truly a well-done remodel and an upgrade down there, then I can see supporting that. But I do have outstanding questions. One more thing?
One more thing. We talked about this a couple of years ago and in between, the sound transport between the Rio Grande Park and Theater Aspen. And I think 2 or 3 years ago, there was a proposed concert that was going to be in Rio Grande Park, and that it conflicted with the schedule that you had already established. And it's my recollection that your comment was, Jeb, that was that if it's underground, that they could have a concert in Rio Grande Park and you could have a performance in Theater Aspen at the same time without there being a sound issue.
Without thinking that it's a swell idea that we have concerts every night in Rio Grande Park, that is correct. I still believe that however bad or good it is now, it will be better under this configuration. And Tori, just 2 quick responses. The chart with the day's usage does include a rehearsal and changeover time, so there's not a hidden upsurge there. And the more detailed answers are exactly why we want to begin the land use conversation, is to answer all those things in as much detail as you guys need.
With that, I'm going to open it up to board members. If you have any specific questions about what you've seen here, that'd be great.
Yeah, and our board has engaged with this a couple times since we've seen you last, so why don't we see if there's any questions so that we can get into discussion about if this is an appropriate space?
I mean, I'm going to request Howie and Tad, maybe Jim and I can vacate so you're at microphones. So that way we can make sure your comments are recorded.
Okay, and then I have some comments, but I'd rather make them after you. That kind of gentleman's thing. Yeah, okay.
Thanks to all the board members for your work on this subject. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just one question, just procedure. This doesn't, except for an advisory vote, this development wouldn't require any type of vote type of vote you have when you're selling park space or changing the use of park space?
A couple of the questions have brought up process, and I just wanted to kind of elaborate on a very short summary of where it goes from here. I think tonight, really just to reiterate, we're looking for a discussion around the appropriateness of the space. We're anticipating that in the July meeting with the Open Space and Trails Board, that we will look to the board to either consider a recommendation to continue and support it or a recommendation to not support. That would be on the Open Space and Trails side. As Sarah suggested, she'll be requesting an executive session to discuss the terms of the lease and what Jim and their attorney Bart Johnson have been working on as a letter of intent. Those two things could happen in parallel in July. Depending upon the outcome of those two discussions, we could go into a land use discussion where they would be, they would have a signed letter of intent authorizing a land use application. And from there, to answer your question, within the land use process, it is possible that it is approved with a condition of voter approval. So it's not necessarily perfunctory, and I would make sure that I'm speaking correctly with Jim, but my understanding is once it's in the land use process, certainly there could be an approval that's conditional on a vote.
And that would be a decision of council?
Yes, I
Come
believe
on back,
so.
Jim.
There are certainly approvals that could be subject to referendum, and that would allow council also to present them to the public for a vote. It's similar to what happened with LIF 1, where there were actions that if council had the authority, I shouldn't say if, council had the authority to proceed without a decision by the electorate, but all the issues would be subject to referendum if council went that way. Council made the decision to put it on the ballot. That could be a situation that you face here. Does that answer the question? I'm not sure I heard all of the question back there.
No, you answered it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Jim, can I just ask for clarification? And if this council decides to approve it, subject to a referendum, that's one way to get it on the ballot. If this council decides to approve it without the condition of a plebiscite, then there could be an initiative from the public to put it as a vote. Is that correct?
That is correct. It would be a referendum at that point, but that is correct. That's exactly how that could happen, and petitions circulated to place it on the ballot.
Okay.
Other questions from Open Space and Trails Board members?
Or comments?
Questions?
Questions? Well, I'll look at the other side, the other green side of your proposal. What's the versatility of the building? In other words, is it, if you're not successful with running Theater Aspen sometime in the future, because things do change, market forces occur, and the city has to, or you have to, you decide to leave the building, what would be the use of the building, and who would that fall, responsibility of maintenance fall upon? Whose shoulders does that fall upon? And what kind of protection or guarantees to the public they're not ending up being burdened with the maintenance of an expensive building?
And Howie, that question came up early on, and it's subject to negotiation. So
Okay,
there's
so it's
different.
on the table to be resolved.
It is definitely,
All right.
yes, there would definitely be language around that very concept.
Okay. My other question follows up on, I think, our meeting at Charles Gunnis' office back in, was that September last year, thereabouts? Which was very successful, and I do feel that it's a huge improvement over where you started. So I really thank you for that and listening. Just by way of adding a little historical anecdote, 50 years ago, this was the snow dump for the city, which had a multi-use purpose where dirt bikes then jumped over the snow bank. So I think this is a very positive evolution. So a good job there. I recall in that meeting, we talked about a model. I thought, or a scale model of sorts, showing the building relative to the Rio Grande Park, John Denver Park. So the public, instead of just seeing renderings on a 8 by 11 piece of paper or a CAD, that the public can really look at this from its more tangible scale point of view.
We certainly think that's a good idea, and as we proceed with this, we're happy to make one. Charles claims he knows how to do that.
Well, and I'm talking about so tangible, that it's
Yes.
not just a
No, I know what you
series
mean.
of renderings on
I
a
know what you mean.
video screen.
Personally, I think that some projects that are not as easily, projects that are not well understood by the public generally, which are mostly buildings in place, are much better served by a model.
Okay.
Where you can see it in context, and I think when we did the City Hall, it would have been good for us to have a model, because then people who were objecting to what they thought was going to be here would have been more calmed down, because they would realize it wasn't as big as people imagined.
Right.
Yeah, so.
So you're going to have real grass or AstroTurf?
Yeah, exactly. So a model is useful.
Okay, thanks. Those are my two questions.
I actually don't have any questions, just don't want to be redundant on things that have already been spoken on.
Adam?
Sure, real quick question. Thank you so much for the presentation, and echoing Mayor Tory's comments that I think we all love the theater. One of the things that comes to mind for our parks is that they're accessible for everyone in the community. What will you do to ensure that this doesn't become an exclusive space, and that the entire community can benefit from this new structure and building?
Well, I think it's already a priority for us to make this a space that the entire community enjoys, and that's why we do so much in the school system, and we have something called the Community Ticketing Program, which does 600 to 1,000 free tickets every summer, which is substantial given the few performances that we have. Having a building like this just provides a bigger opportunity to do those things, because you have a gathering space, you have more. I mean, this is the upside of Tory's comment about the intensity, because you do have more capacity and more days that you can activate. You can do more things, and not all of them have to rely upon filling the house every day for 63 days in the summer, because those are the only 63 days you have. So I think there's a lot of upside there.
I'll add to that. The original plan we had was to, mound over the whole building, so the entire park was still, pedestrians, everybody else could use the whole park, where you can't use it today because there's a tent in the way. But in this new scheme, the roof is still activated, so that the public can access it whenever they want, whenever they wish.
So you don't foresee a massive increase in ticket prices following this?
I think massive is a trick word.
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
what's massive, scaling the house, which is what the theater expression is for each seat and what it costs, is most successful when there's a balance. And so the top price seats are always going to be top price. But if you're going to be successful as a community entity, you have to make sure that the lower prices are accessible. And that's why, on average, if you buy one of our season passes, it's $50 a seat. If you buy the top price seats, it's $140 a seat. So that kind of ratio and that kind of objective will certainly stay in place, because it's pointless otherwise. I mean, otherwise let's charge $1,000 a seat and just, do 6 shows a year, 6 performances a year, and go home.
Awesome, thank you.
Some of those items like pricing, ticket pricing and such, wouldn't be something that we would necessarily put into any agreements that we have. However, some usages can be prohibited or encouraged through agreements that we have.
Absolutely.
Other questions? No more questions.
Thank you for that very much. I know that there may be board members that wanted to share different comments, but I would ask you to reserve those for the upcoming meetings that you will be having for this project and not make any statements at this time around support or other items outside of the questions and information requests.
Well, Tori, if I could,
Yep.
would it be agreeable to just maybe summarize the concerns that this board has had in our previous conversations?
Yes, if we don't ever have those from you already.
I don't think you do. Yeah, so I think the board as a whole has that appreciation for Theater Aspen as an incredible partner, and what they're doing in the park is consistent with what we would hope for that space. But there are some concerns about this project that we want you all to know about, and I'm guessing they're coming to your mind as well, but they're really threefold. One being the impact to that park space. This is really the crown jewel of our inventory between the Rio Grande ball field, the associated trails, and the John Denver Sanctuary. And so 2 summers of interruption there would be a massive impact, not to mention, the environmental impacts of new construction, and especially $38 million complex construction. Shouldn't be minimized. The second concern is just that privatization of a public space. That space is so important to everybody who calls this place home, and Theater Aspen, if they're going to invest $38 million, would rightly deserve a lengthy lease for that space. And I think that's a concern in terms of that space becoming exclusive. And then, of course, the concerns that you guys brought up in terms of the liability of having such a complex building in that space if something were to happen to Theater Aspen, which, of course, no one is hoping for, or if, management changes and the management and maintenance of that building kind of were to be compromised. Obviously having that building in our portfolio, in our parks portfolio, would certainly be a liability rather than an asset. So I think that the status quo, I think, is maybe not perfect, but a permanent structure in that space, I think, raises those concerns that I just mentioned, and happy to kind of provide more on that at a later date as well.
Thank you. Did anything come to any minds while we were all talking? Any other last clarifications necessary this time? Okay. It's something that just came to my mind when that was, when we were just listening to that was, we don't often see alternatives. And you guys have already done a modification off of a first proposal. But some of the questions or perhaps concerns that you've heard here, I'd be interested to know if they could be addressed through design or not. Ultimately, if we come back for land use application, we're going to want an explanation for almost every square foot kind of thing, And so I'm just wondering about our opportunity to see those alternatives and in response to what you've heard up here. With that, Sarah, do you need more conversation on this before we would move this to a different venue for further discussion? Not tonight, obviously. No. Okay, thank you. Matt, anything else for you?
Oh, thanks.
And does the applicant have any questions for us?
Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, board. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you in a moment.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. So the next item agenda that we have is Marolt Open Space Proposed Bike Skills Trail Site Visit. We will be meeting out at the Marolt Cafeteria. So we're going to go on a brief recess here. We will reconvene out at the site, and we will be adjourning this work session at that point. We will not be returning to adjourn from this room. Thank you, as always, to GrassRoots. We do not have a regularly scheduled meeting for tomorrow, so please join us next week.